family, thank you for tuning into Our Roots podcast with Joseph Baba Ifa. Where only the strongest roots see the light, brought to you by 𝗏𝗏𝗏 Candles and more. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please go ahead and hit that like button and tap on that subscribe button. Spicy episode today, Ifa and Taboos. And you liked him so much, I had to bring him back. My brother, Damian Ogbe Tua. D, what's good?
Hello. Happy to be here. Ready to get into it.
I know you are. Just like Ifa and Divination, I couldn't think of anybody else to do this episode with for all the wrong reasons, right?
Right. I feel you.
Damian, needless to say, I've always enjoyed practicing Ifa with you because you are a stickler, just like I am. You like things done correctly. Not to say you're very reasonable about things too. You're not trying to make people do the impossible, but there are some things that grind your gears.
Indeed.
And you're very open about expressing them. And I do believe you're a warrior and advocate for the positive actions that make this religion what it is, a result-driven belief system. So, before I get into like taboos and stuff like that, to you, what is a taboo? Let's start there.
Yeah. So, a taboo, in the simplest terms, is something that we should not be doing for one reason or another, right? Prohibitions, things like that. It can be anything from something you're not supposed to eat to a behavior that you shouldn't be partaking in, right? And there are taboos that are Odu specific. There are taboos that are Orisha specific.
Yes.
There are taboos that are universal, where there's just certain things that nobody should be allowed to do.
Oh, yes.
Right. And part of our job, I believe, and I take very, very seriously, as you kind of mentioned, is trying to educate people in that, because it's like anything. When we look at this as medicine, you take the wrong medicine, bad things happen.
Oh, yeah. And the Odu Baba Barameji, I think, says it best. It says, he who knows doesn't die like he who does not know.
Actually.
In the ancient world, if you were unaware of a law, you could not be charged for the crime. There had to be knowledge, there had to be intent, and ultimately action, and I think that's why it's so important, whether it's Our Roots, whether it's the independent work you do on your channel or in the community, to let it be known. But I think we're kind of entering into a phase of Ifa and Orisha where no one wants to mention the taboos because some people might want to get away with them.
Absolutely. That's the problem. Ignorance. There's a saying that says la ignorancia es atrevida. Ignorance is daring.
Yes.
Right. When you don't know something, you're more likely to act a fool. You're more likely to think
like a child.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the benefit to some of those less scrupulous people is that people are ignorant. People don't know how things are supposed to be, which is why, it tends to ruffle feathers when you start talking about how things should be, right? How things are, what the proper way is, what the improper way is. And granted, we talk about we become experts in the gray areas of things, right?
Yes, sir.
There are some gray areas, but there are some that are not. There is no gray area. There is correct and incorrect. There's right and wrong. And we have to learn to understand that and to really, see the differences. My sign is a perfect example of that, where it says we have to learn to distinguish between sand and mud.
Yeah, that which is pure and that which is rotten. Yeah, I love that. And when we look at the concept of 𝗍𝗶𝗸𝗏, which is really what we're talking about here, which is taboo, in reality, the delegator of 𝗍𝗶𝗸𝗏 was 𝗃𝗏𝗏. That's the whole. Really, 𝗍𝗶𝗏𝗏 is based on our Odu of Ifa, whether it's hand of Ifa or as Babalawo. 𝗃𝗏𝗏 in the Odu of 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏 was able to identify that which was positive or negative for the person, whether it was deities, medicines, etc. Now, mind you, all Orisha are going to speak on some level about 𝗍𝗶𝗏 or taboo. Sometimes you may have heard this as 𝗍𝗶𝗏, but it's actually 𝗍𝗶𝗏. But the other ones are meant to fall into conjunction with 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏. Like, some people, when we come out of our Ita of Orisha, the only thing we're left to eat is maybe some organic kale and some bottled air.
Right.
But really the ones you really want to hone in on are from your Odu of Ifa, or if you've actually gone through the ceremony of 𝗍𝗶𝗏, because there is a ceremony that's done.
Correct.
It's very 𝗃𝗶𝗏 based, but still fabulous and very productive, where you're literally distinguishing your specific 𝗍𝗶𝗏s within your sign and within your Ori. So we've interacted with a bunch of brothers and sisters. We've seen a bunch of situations and all the times we've worked. Before we get into some of the specific expressions that we're seeing now within Ifa and Orisha, what are some of the symptoms of falling into taboo within our spirituality? What are you going to see?
Well, you're ultimately going to see yourself falling out of alignment with your destiny, with your Ori, right? We always talk about, doing divination and reading and learning about the signs so that we can live according to Olodumare's intent for us. And any violation of that is met with resistance. In fact, a side note to that, part of that concept is, or actually that concept is the responsibility of 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏.
Oh, yes.
𝘃𝗶𝗱 is always there waiting for us to violate taboos.
Yes.
And when we do, he makes things more difficult.
As he should.
Absolutely. So that you hopefully learn.
Yeah.
Now, we don't always learn.
No.
Or some people, like the brick wall behind us, some people have to hit their head a few times.
Yeah, the Corvette. Yeah, you keep smashing into it.
Until they get it. But that is ultimately the concept, right?
Yeah, we're gonna delve into a couple different ones. I mean, we were just talking off camera, but one that's come up recently is the concept of initiating children into Orisha or Ifa priesthood. Now, mind you, we always provide both arguments, right? Both sides. In Africa, this is really a non-issue. Before the age of 7, as we have stipulated in the Lukumi tradition, they initiate into priesthood pretty frequently, whether it's Orisha or Ifa, like you see young Babalawo. And, those are their concepts. I haven't seen any patakis or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 that speak against it over there. Mm-hmm. But, recently, and maybe not so recently, I remember my godfather always told me of this phase back in like the 50s or 60s. They used to call it el Ifa de los niños, or the Ifa of the boys, when they were doing Ifa to a lot of young men and things like that over there. And a lot of those guys now have like 50 or 60 years of Ifa, and they haven't even, scratched 50 or 60 yet. It's wild. So, when we look at our corpus, you look at the Odu of Osa Ogunda, or Osakuleya. It speaks of when Oya was desperate for her son to initiate into Orisha or as Babalawo, right?
Yes.
And Oya, actually, there's a couple patakis, whether it's this one, whether it's Odi Ogunda, or Funnabe has another one, where Oya was one of those mothers that was very big on, my son needs to be a Babalawo. My son needs to be an Orisha priest, so sometimes you interact with people with those concepts. And Orumila told her, because he was, Shango's brother, and he was very respectful of his sister-in-law, but he tried to explain to her, he said, the first 7 years of a child's life, the guardian Orisha or Orishas are the parents. Ori has not awakened in a way to the point where it knows right from wrong to have the need for a defender of itself. Because that's what Orisha is. It's the defender of the head. It's the head which has been selected for. So, Orumila made it a taboo within our tradition for anyone to receive priesthood before 7 years of age. Now, mind you, there are people who have done this and have come out perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. There are people who have done this and come out lesser than, right? We've spoken about this because we've recognized that Ifa is definitely, at least within the Babalawo aspect of thing, it is definitely a thing of men, right? It's definitely a thing of adult, completely aware men, right? Orisha, I believe, is something as well that should be taken into account from an adult standpoint, if possible, definitely over 7 years, based on what Orumila has stipulated in this Odu. I, recently had an offer from a gentleman who wanted me to initiate his son into Ifa. A guy that I respect, a guy that I like quite a bit. And unfortunately, I had to decline him at the moment, nothing because of anything ulterior that I saw or anything. Very sound home, sound people, but not something I want to engage in because there's a lot of variables that we can get into. But I ask you, what are your viewpoints on the idea of priesthood initiation within children?
My studies have led me to one conclusion regarding this point or this issue, is that there are many reasons not to do it. Yeah. And I have yet to be given one that I can, without a doubt, shadow of a doubt, say that makes sense. Yeah. The one argument that many people use to justify initiating children super young is save their life, the health, things that they're...
Sure, the fear, yeah.
The problem with that is, in my understanding of Ifa, is that we don't crown Santo to save ourselves.
Yes, sir.
We do 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏. We perform 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗏 to save ourselves. We crown Orisha because we want to be a priest of that Orisha.
Vocation.
Right? We crown Orisha because we have such an intense love for that Orisha. And I'm not doubting people's love for their Orishas by any stretch of the imagination, but that's why we initiate. We don't initiate because because someone told you in 21 days, if you don't crown, you're going to die. That's fear tactics.
Yeah.
That's terrorism.
Yeah.
And it's simply not true. The number of 𝗵𝗍𝗍s, if you had to say a number of 𝗵𝗍𝗍s in each particular sign, just for health alone.
Oh, dude, the majority of them are for health.
Yeah.
I mean, Ifa's all about longevity and procreation, so
Absolutely.
that's usually going to be the basis of it.
There's always going to be a sign that will fall for that person who's experiencing health issues and an 𝗵𝗍𝗍 to go with it. And so that for me negates the concept of I'm doing Santo for health. Now, does the Santo give health? Absolutely, right? The Santo gives us health and opportunities so that we can create the life that we want.
Yes, sir.
It's not a miraculous thing in the sense that money's going to drop from the sky or you're suddenly going to be cured, but you're given strength, you're given understanding, you're given, and doors are opened for you so that you can take advantage of them when you crown or when you're initiated, whether it's Osha or Ifa, right? But to say that that is the medicine, that's the only thing that's going to heal whatever illness you're dealing with is just simply not true.
Well, it's like we were just talking about off camera is there's a reason Orunmila is the first step.
Yes.
You know, when we look at women at 7 days or men at 9 days or therefore after, in the process of 𝗃𝗍𝗏 or Santeria Loruko, however you want to term it, that's what that's for. Yes. And you look at the characteristics of that ceremony, it is very inviting. It's very entry level. You could see how a child could make it through that without trauma or discomfort.
Absolutely.
You understand? And Orunmila is the savior. It's not that the other Orishas are not, but they had to seek Orunmila for their salvation as well.
Absolutely.
Even before they decided to change their lives, grow out of 𝗵𝗍𝗍, become priestly, become kingly, queenly, etc., they visited Orunmila first. So, you know, those who have Orunmila really don't have to necessarily fret over death. That's why Orunmila is the first Orisha that is used to combat death, simply because that's the gray area that we work with, you know.
Indeed.
So I think with the hand of Ifa, with a sound home, decent parents, I think we can make it to 7 years, you know, barring, you know, God forbid, a phenomenon, which happens.
And even those phenomenons are stipulated in the 𝗏𝗲𝗍 that comes for that child.
Absolutely.
When we speak of things such as 𝗵𝗏𝗍𝗏.
Yes.
You know, you will know early on, if you give that child hand of Ifa, you will know early on whether they came with that specific type of complication, and therefore what we need to do to remedy it.
Absolutely. And I mean, you talk about 𝗵𝗏𝗍𝗏, there's various 𝗏𝗲𝗍, 𝗏𝗲𝗍, etc., you know, that provide 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗿 as well, you know. I mean, there's so many solutions for that rather than having to, and it's not the money. I mean, you know, if you have the funds to be able to take your child through said process, that's prestigious, and, you know, congratulations to you. But it's all about productivity, in my opinion. And, you know, when you look at conversations about people initiating children at 1 week old, 2 weeks old, it's a little scary, in my opinion. But, you know, everybody parents differently. But, I mean, Ifa's opinion resonates with us saying it's not necessary. And you actually look at the effects, because the child was free of any guilt. You know, the initiate is always free of guilt. The 𝗿𝗲𝗍𝗏 𝗀𝗏𝗍𝗏 speaks of this, or 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏𝗏 as well. But the guilt belies upon the parents. So when you look at Osaku-Leya and how everything panned out, who ended up getting the brunt of that spiritual frustration wasn't the baby, wasn't Shango, it was Oya. You know, where it immediately caused her to come into friction with the people she loved the most, her husband and her child, and it ultimately, you know, really decomposed that home.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
And you see that where there's this emphasis on that, and we really have to focus on what's best for the child. I mean, with the hand of Ifa, I mean, people can go quite a ways. I know people that have lived 90 years with just the hand of Ifa. You know, and you also have to see that desire level as well, so that Orunmila or the Orishas don't end up in the garbage, which is obviously is a taboo as well. You know, because you can be, because we could say, oh, our kids threw the Orishas away. Well, who told you to initiate them and give them so many Orishas? You know, so at the end of the day, the responsibility belies upon the parent, like the 𝗏𝗲𝗍 says.
And actually, there is something that I would, you know, with regards to this subject in particular, I think that parents in particular have to understand something, is that if we look at the legal world, right, you have to be of age to sign a contract.
Yeah.
What people need to start to understand is that when you initiate into Osha, when you initiate into Ifa, you're signing a contract.
Yeah.
Without going into the details of what happens in those rooms, It is a contract. It is a pact.
Oh,
How
yeah.
is a child that's 2 weeks old, 3 months old, 2 years old?
And your
How is
parent can't do that for you
they
because that's
cannot
between you and God.
because that's your ori.
Yes.
It is not your parents' ori at the time. Your parents' ori will protect you. They there's the connection that never stops, right?
Yeah.
Even to the point where, signs like 𝗃𝗲𝗹𝗁𝗍𝗍 tell us we can do ebo to a person through the mother, things like
Correct.
that, right? That's always there. But your debt is your debt.
Yep.
And why would we obligate a child to incur a debt that they are unable to understand?
Yeah, no, definitely not. As fathers, I can see why we wouldn't do that.
I'll take all the debt in the
Yeah,
world for
sure,
my child.
sure. As much as you can, as much as nature would allow you to,
Right.
because there's things. As much as we want to avoid our children feeling pain or
They have to go through
obligations, ultimately, that if we do a good job, they will become adults and assume the responsibilities of their actions. And I just feel like it's a little bit disingenuous to take a child, take him through such a traumatic process. Because Orisha is no joke neither. You know what I'm saying? And then leave them kind of confounded where, what did I do or what was done to me?
Yeah.
You know?
And I'm actually, since I got involved in the medical field with the EMT work and
Yeah.
for the department, I find it very interesting to look at the correlation, right, between the spiritual and the pathophysiology of things, and just how the body works, and what does this Orisha represent in the body and that Orisha and things like that. And when we talk about the 7-year mark of a child, we're also talking about when this finally closes.
There you go.
Soft spot.
There you go.
Finally closes.
Yeah.
That soft spot, they are as close to God as they can be. They
It's
don't
open.
need initiation.
Still being constructed. 𝗿𝗶𝗸𝗍 says it. Ayala is still working on the brain even after it's born.
To interfere with such a huge amount of energy that happens in the 𝗃𝗿𝗍 is too much. Let that. It's in the best interest of the child and the family and everyone who works at Santo.
Of course.
Because as we know, there's signs that talk about how things were done beforehand.
Yeah.
Or too early.
Yeah, no.
And everybody lost their head because of it.
Yeah, yeah. 𝗃𝗲𝗹𝗁 speaks of it when everybody wasn't on the same page or aware of what was occurring. And there's various odus that have patakis where not everybody was under the impression or having, agreements in what was occurring. But, there's a couple dollars in the envelope, so we all just look the other way and close our eyes and, the heads will roll,
Absolutely.
And for all those parents out there, with Orumila, there is no fear. So take your time, raise your children, enjoy their youth before we start, having them swear things in front of God. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Damian, I will say, if people don't know, you're a fabulous drummer.
Oh, thank you.
You're the first man to ever put the 𝗃𝗲𝗍𝗁 on my legs. And, you really have reached a level of mastery over it, And I know how much you love the deity that is Ayang or Anya. And, I want to give you the opportunity to kind of talk about the state of the drum and some of the things that you possibly feel could be improved upon.
Yes. I was actually talking about this fairly recently. So for those of you that are unaware, right, there is, for us, when there's a consecrated drum, there is literally the energy of an Orisha put inside that drum. That drum is a living entity.
Yes.
At the point that it is consecrated. I ask, and for those that are initiated, if someone came into your home and went up to your altar, Oshun, Shango, whoever it is, and grabbed the maraca or the bell and started bashing your terrain or bashing your Orisha, you'd be offended. You'd probably lose your mind.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
Why then are we going to tambores and seeing them abuse the drum when they play?
Yeah.
And all due respect to my brothers, because again, Omoanya, which are children of the drum, are all brothers.
Yes.
Just as all Babalawos are brothers.
𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲𝗁𝗍𝗍
Asheo.
Yeah.
But it's painful to watch.
Yeah.
When you really, and that was my first initiation.
Yeah.
I was sworn into Anya, and the level of love, affection for that Orisha and for what it's capable of doing and how important it is in our religion.
Yeah.
That was instilled in me by my padrino of Anya, Reinaldo.
Yeah.
Is such that it creates a physical pain to watch how some of these drummers, and I hate to say this, but some of the newer drummers just beat on the drums. I was always taught from when I first started here is that, in Spanish we say al tambor no se le da golpe, se le saca sonido.
Yes.
You don't beat the drum, you bring the sound out of it. And when you see drummers, old school drummers playing, and there are some, not to discredit some of the newer guys who are doing it right? But you see the drum, there's a finesse that happens. There's a
Oh
love.
yeah, it's glorious. Yeah.
They're not hitting it from way out here and
No,
just beating
no.
the heck out of it. It's done from a place of love. It's done from a place of respect, understanding that at that point in time, you are part of that drum.
You're one.
You know, you're one, and you're calling the energies of nature to partake in this celebration, right? And you're allowing, in the case of certain ceremonies that happen with the 𝗹𝗶𝗶𝗶, with the new initiate, you are responsible for transmitting the message that there was someone crowned on earth.
Oh, yeah.
And that's huge, right? Why would you do that under such extreme physical, just abuse?
Yeah, no, that's not a good message.
No.
Because you got to imagine, if the drum is the one sending the message, how are messages relayed better? A handshake, a thank you. The message is not only going to be said verbatim, it's going to be said with good humor. And then you smack somebody across the face, go tell your boss this, that, and the third. They're gonna be like, yeah, this, and this, but I can't stand that guy, or whatever they're involved in.
And if we look at it just from the pure, physiological perspective, we have these microphones in front of us, right?
Correct.
We're speaking at a certain volume, with a certain cadence.
Yeah.
If we now start to eat the microphone, yell at the top of our lungs, and all this thing, there's distortion. The same thing is happening with these drummers that are hitting too hard, beating too hard, playing too fast is another problem.
Sure.
Sometimes. There's moments, right? Everybody gets excited. I'm not trying to be, the killjoy.
Too rustic, yeah.
But there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
And there's nothing more beautiful when all three drummers plus the singer, they're just working as a
cadence.
Group. Yes. Oh my God, it's a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. And you see things really happen at the drum. You see these energies manifest, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, sadly, I think many practitioners, and again, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody with this, but people look at it as just a party. People look at it as just a jam session.
I think that's
not what it is.
No. I think it's also a reflection of culture in general today, because I think people are looking, with how stressful society is, they're looking for that one moment to just let it all go.
It's understandable.
And but I don't think I think that's what happens is, and I think it reflects upon the people directing the ceremony. It is a joyous moment, but at the same time, it never stops being spiritual and religious.
Right. Perfect example too is we have to understand that originally, every hit, every sound, every note that you get out of the drum is a syllable in Yoruba.
Yeah, it's wild.
You see what I'm saying? A classic example is when you hear someone go boom boop on the drum. Dide.
That's wild. Yeah.
Dide means rise.
Yeah.
Right? When someone, the Orisha, salutes, we don't have to say anything with our mouths.
Yeah.
Dide, and the Orisha will stand up.
Oh man. Well, it's things like that, and hearing things like what you're saying, and I think it reflects upon Ifa as well. I think the conversation about the drum is going to, reiterate a bunch of things in all of the different priesthoods and aspects of our culture. What do you attribute this to? This lack of process. Like when the old guys were around, I would imagine things like this weren't occurring like that.
Yeah, I remember when I was sworn in, and even I will say this about Matanzas. The last time I was there was in 2008, and it was still that way. It was still very rustic, very traditional, very strict as far as what's correct and what's incorrect. You'd have, if you sat down and you weren't doing it right, they got you up.
Yeah.
You're done. Next.
Yeah.
Right? Because it had to be right. We're there doing a job. Yes, we have fun. It's beautiful music. Like just musically speaking, it's super interesting.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's what drew me in from the start. It was my introduction to this religion was the drumming. I could not take my eyes off of these drums. When I saw there was a performance at a college that they were unconsecrated drums, but they were showing some of these rhythms, and I couldn't take my eyes off it. I was mesmerized. So I understand that aspect of it. But when you have someone who sits down with the wrong intention, it throws the whole. It's the one, weak link.
Yeah, you could hear it. You could feel it.
Off. And I think part of it has to do with people receiving drums that didn't pay their dues.
Yeah.
Drumming. I've personally have met at least 3 Babalawos who have received received their own consecrated drum because they know that it creates income.
Yeah, it's commerce, yeah.
But they don't even play.
Yeah, no, they just walk out the drum, yeah.
It's like if you were to have made Ifa and you had no intention of learning how to do your moyuba.
Yeah.
Or you had no intention of learning how to consult.
Yeah.
What was the point other than wearing the bracelet?
Yeah.
And
other than saluting the drum when 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗁 comes on, you know what I'm saying?
There's a lot more to it.
Yeah. And And you see that as well. I mean, when you look at the ambiance of the drum, it's like you say, it's beautiful, it's joyous, it's communal, it calls. But it's like you said, some people kind of lose the focus. You know, what are some of the things that are happening at the drummings that you think are kind of misdirecting us, possibly? Beginning with the people that are directing the ceremony, you know, the brother drummers.
So first and foremost, I think people have lost the concept of responsibility for whether things are done right or not. The owner of the drum, let's say at some point in my future, I have my own drum.
Yeah.
And I get.
You've been drumming for how long?
22, 23 years. So there's been no rush.
Yeah.
For reasons, because I know it's a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm the owner of a drum. Somebody comes to my house, which is the correct way to do things, by the way. They come and 𝘃𝗀𝗹𝗁 is given.
Yeah, you look for 𝗀𝗃𝗹𝗁, yeah.
You know, to then 𝗀𝗃𝗹𝗁, for there to be an affirmative response, so that the 𝗀𝗃𝗹𝗁 then goes to play, right?
Yeah.
If it is my drum, it is my responsibility, regardless of whose home it is. I'm directing the ceremony.
You're the 𝗃𝗶𝗸𝗲.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have yet to see that here in the States.
Much more streamlined.
You know, but it's their house, they do it this way. That's why we're falling into the problem.
Yes.
That constant en mi casa,
Yeah.
in my house. In my house we do it this way, in my house we do it that way. And we said earlier, there are some gray areas, but there are some that need to be black or white.
Well, I actually just brought this up in the Dilogum video because that is something we hear a lot, right? Being people that have walked so much. And you hear that, bueno, en mi casa, in my house, my tradition, my clan. And I actually found a pataki in a verse recently, brother, that really trumps quite a bit of that. It says that this is true. Origins and traditions and clans, all these things are to be respected as long as it is based on the scriptures of Ifa.
Yes.
So you can have your traditions, but it has to be somewhere within this paragraph for it to be legitimate. Because if that's the case, we could have a tradition of just, I don't know, throwing red paint on a wall.
Well, that's ultimately, and again, no disrespect to some of our New Age practitioners, but that is ultimately what New Age is. You pick and choose what you want, and what you like, and what works for you.
Yeah.
And that you lose the essence.
Yeah.
Part of the magic of this is that 500 years ago, they were doing it the same way we do it now.
Yeah, definitely. 𝘃𝗀𝗃𝗏 and all those guys, man. Yeah.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was just, I want to say I had a couple of years playing. I think I was already initiated. And so I knew some of the terminology. And it just so happens that I was living in Boston. And one of the guys there had some drummers, 𝗀𝗃𝗹𝗁 drummers from Nigeria, show up, right? I'm there with my padrino of 𝗀𝗃𝗹𝗁, and we take these guys aside for a minute because we wanted to kind of
dialogue,
see what's going on, right? And my padrino said a phrase that is very important to the 𝗃𝗏𝗀𝗃.
Yeah.
These gentlemen sang it back to us.
Yeah.
I get chills thinking about it.
That's epic, yeah.
Because we had never met before.
Sure.
They live in Nigeria, in Yoruba land. No reason for us to have learned it together or transmitted it to each other, and yet that continuity is seen throughout.
No.
That is why we have such amazing strength in numbers. That's why things work the way they work, because that ancestral line. That's why we do the Moyuba, why we mention all the Egun, the ancestors, right? Because we're feeding off of that energy.
To get that affirmation. I think that's why that continuity is important. We did an episode on 𝗀𝗃𝗹𝗁 with Mr. Mike Spyro.
An eminence.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Gentleman, definitely. I mentioned you when I interviewed him, and he came up under 𝘃𝗏𝗏 and all those guys, and he said it. He said back then, to even be eligible for the conversation, to have a drum of your own, 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
Hitting it. And you had to be getting it, And, he's another one, son of 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗏. He says, I'm not trying to be old and crotchety, but when you learn from men like that, and also you had a great opportunity in Matanzas to learn and meet quite a few people apart from your godfather, of course. Things were done a certain way, and even though now it may seem uncomfortable or arduous, things always turned out right. The drum always ended a certain way. Ceremony always ended a certain way. What do you think is the quickest way back to that?
Oh my God. It's easy to blame the younger generation. I'm not old by any stretch of the imagination. I get it, but 22, 23 years in this now, kind of gives me a little bit of leeway to be old and crotchety.
Sure.
And I think that we, as the elders, need to demand certain things.
Yeah.
I remember when I was initiated, the tradition was always when you were learning to drum, you might get sworn in. You weren't allowed to touch the first drum until you could maintain the achere,
Yeah.
right? The maraca,
Yeah.
just supplemental. It's not really supplemental because it's important, the rhythm that it holds, but you had to master that top to bottom before they would allow you to touch the timekeeper drum, which is the smallest one.
Yeah.
Right? That's been lost because now what do? We sit down and everybody wants to play the mother drum.
Sure.
Everyone wants to jump right into that, and that's just not how that works.
Yeah. He was explaining that to me as well, and you've mentioned this before as well. He was like, dude, you had to at least have a good solid 3.5 years on 𝘃𝗀𝗃𝗃 before you even touched 𝘃𝗀𝗃𝗃. The only time you ever touched the ya was to set it up for the padrino.
Or to hold it while you sat down.
Yeah, he's like, adjust the bantes, you know what I'm saying?
Listen, I never forget. This was right after. So I went to Matanzas. I had a good solid, background here studying with my padrino. Well, not here, up in Boston. And so I go with him and I get initiated, and I'm doing the 4, 6, 7 hours a day practicing.
Yeah, bodybuilding numbers.
Yeah, man. They actually that whole time they have me on a ya, which I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And the only reason was there were 3 of us, and I was the more advanced at the time.
Yeah.
Well, I get my opportunity first drumming the first drumming since I'm sworn in.
Yeah.
To go to this drum, and it just so happens that Oya was on earth, was dancing.
Yeah.
So the drummers look at me because they had all worked my ceremony. They all knew that I was initiated. Yeah. And it's like, when we stop, after I think it was an iyawo they were going to present or something. After we do this, you come so you can sit down. Well, me and my baby mentality, I'm like, okay, they're going to let me play 𝘃𝗀𝗃𝗃, which is the little one. It's not the least important by any stretch of the imagination, but the least complicated.
Yeah.
Right? So I go and I stand, when they're done, I stand in front of the 𝘃𝗀𝗃𝗃, and I'm about to take it, I get a tap on the back, and I'm like, no, here. The ya.
Yeah.
I did not know where to no sabía poner la cara.
Yeah.
I did not know where I was. I did not know what to say. My heart went from 0 to 100.
You were live, yeah.
That unfortunately is lost.
Yeah.
That idea that you are a baby until you're not anymore. That idea that you have to pay your dues. That idea that you don't deserve to sit on any drum that you want.
None of us do. None of us deserve any of this. Yeah.
And that's what needs to be brought back. And I don't know how that happens, because sadly now we have, like I said, there's people who don't even know how to play themselves that are owners of fundamental just because it generates income.
Yeah.
I feel like I think the brother Michael Sparrow said, you have to have paid your dues.
Yeah, there was none of that. None of that.
You could come literally with however much money you had, and they'd say no.
And then the crazy thing is what Mike told me was 𝘃𝗃𝗃 caught him off guard and said, your drum's waiting for you. And he was like, Padrino, how much? And he said 𝘃𝗃𝗃 got insulted. He said, I didn't talk about money. You know what I'm saying? And he said he was shook. He said, I don't even know how to accept this.
I had the privilege of meeting 𝘃𝗃𝗃, and he was that kind of personality.
Yeah, 𝘃𝗃𝗃𝗃 Chung, if I recall. Yes, Nyanya and everything. Yeah, he was a character. Yeah.
And
end of an era.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, his drum and the drum that I was that my padrino's drum was born from have the same name.
Wow.
It's always been that kind of friendly back and forth of which one's older and all this stuff.
Sure.
𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃.
Yeah, beautiful.
But yeah, I think that it's just been lost. It's not. We don't have even the older people, the elders now.
They're
tired. Like they're tired of it.
Yeah.
They don't correct like they used to. And I'm not trying to cause a riot outside outside of the studio.
No, but here. I think there's a level of fear too, because now and oppression is never greeted well. But I think it's like when my grandmother used to say something to me that maybe I didn't like, I would never say anything. I think it depends on how deeply you delve into that relationship with that person, because if they're taking their time and energy to invest in you, their knowledge that took them sacrifice as well, we might have to tolerate a spanking. I mean, and there's no shame in that, because ideally everybody that makes it to the level of CYU or Onilu or Alanya, whatever you want to call it, you've dealt with that. So
Absolutely.
It's understood. But, I think now with the information age, and I think this is a reflection of culture and society right now, people just don't want to hear it.
Well, that's the thing. Information is so readily available now that if you as an elder refuse to give it to them, they'll just go online.
Yeah, they bypass you completely, yeah.
What ends up happening is the bastardization of an entire tradition.
which, yeah, I think within the last, I know it's definitely reared its ugly head since COVID. And that really leads us into the next aspect of 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗶 that I think really applies to all of it is you look at like Ifa's views on certain things, right? Ifa doesn't necessarily prohibit anything. Ifa is a philosophy of moderation, right?
Yes.
If you're going to consume alcohol, do it moderately. If you're going to consume cannabis, do it moderately. You know, if you're going to, I don't know, consume a cigar, everything in moderation,
Right.
even the good or the bad things, right? Because the interesting thing about taboo is they save your life.
Absolutely.
You know, every now and then, oh, you can't eat red beans. Why? Because they're going to save your life. So the thing now is, it's true, all those things in moderation, but those things don't have place in a ceremony.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, when you look at maybe the consumption of cannabis or the overconsumption of alcohol, and I'll let you start off with the drum before I delve into the Ifa and how it responds to it. I mean, where has that deterioration come into play?
I have had episodes, and I call them episodes because it's moments of absolute fury where I walk into a drum and I smell marijuana
Yeah.
being smoked inside the house or just outside the house,
Yeah.
or I see the owners of the house passing out beers while the ceremony is going on.
Yeah.
And that's it boils down to the same thing. It's like, this is a ceremony. You don't go into the church. Christian brothers don't go into the church and get drunk.
And their wine is non-alcoholic.
You see what I'm saying? Like, and it comes back to the same thing. Whether it's the drumming, whether it's an Ifa ceremony, our heads have to be clear.
Yes.
And we're looking
especially
at,
if you're directing.
Yes, and we're looking at substances that by nature are psychoactive.
Yes.
We need to be ourselves. We need to be in our own minds when we're doing these things, because one slip and things become catastrophic.
The drum is off or ceremony's off. I mean, we've worked so many manorulas, and you were present for my first initiations into Ifa of men. We always say the same thing. Look at the first drink done after the last table of Ita, right? You know, no one has consumed anything. No one has misbehaved. None of that. Because like it is a rejoicing, right, of a birthing or an accomplishment. But a doctor can't have a glass of champagne before going in. A pilot cannot, you know, I don't know. Everybody has their different limitations, but at least within the spiritual context, there's really no place for that during ceremony. There's no time, really. If you're doing things correctly and you're moving at a certain pace, no one has time to do that, you know.
And you're more likely to miss steps.
I mean, especially when you're playing an instrument, brother. Like you'll definitely miss a cadence or, you know, a nuance.
Even in the setting of like the hand of Ifa, right?
Sure.
How many times, whether it's your ceremony or mine, because you've worked mine as well.
Yeah.
How many times are we asking each other, did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, hey,
was everything right?
And
how do you do that when you're under
No, I mean, there's no way. And we do that as it gets to the point where it's joking, because we've done this so many times together. It's like there's no way we can miss anything. Yeah. It's just you get to a point where you become so proficient at it and you move so quickly at it where you're like, dude, that was a record. You know, so it speaks of that, right? Now that there's so much information and we have so much of a connection with the motherland that is Nigeria, Africa, there's always that comparable now. Well, we're doing things differently. You guys do it like that. We do it like this. We're big proponents of everything is right within its context, right? Mm-hmm. You know, respect everybody's traditions. But there's a bunch of behaviors going on that we possibly frown upon that, you know, aren't so frowned upon based on concepts by our 𝘃𝗺𝗃 brothers. You know, it's always been a huge taboo for the Lukumi Babalawo to carry on any relationship other than spiritual and platonic with their goddaughters, you know, or even going in another realm, you know, within Orisha, any godparent of any kind interacting in any way other than platonic with any of their godchildren. Now, mind you, and I'm not sure if this is everybody, I'm not doing a blanket or an umbrella concept here, but I have interacted with traditional brothers that say that's not really an issue over there. You know, some of them could even give hand of Ifa to their wives, you know. We base ourselves off of the Odu Irete Yekun, where Orumila was attending to a woman who became his goddaughter. She misinterpreted the affection that she was feeling for him as being something more than spiritually platonic. And Orumila, not being able to resist, you know, fell into taboo and realized the relationship with her, thus catching leprosy from her and both of them dying, right? So that's why we as Lukumi, we say once we've taken a woman through the hand of Ifa process, she is killed and born again as our daughter,
Exactly.
right? Or the men, even though not as applicable based on our characteristics, is killed and born again as our son to help him achieve his goals, whether it be Ifa or otherwise. So, what are your thoughts on this? In the climate of Ifa Orisha now.
There's even to a certain extent, you could speak of 𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗲𝗿𝗲 speaking of
Correct.
there being a very clear line between godparent and godchild.
Oh yeah, or godparent and animal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to avoid confusions, to avoid complications, right? Ultimately, we need to understand that godparent is called such because it is a parent.
Yes, sir.
Godchild is called such because it is a child.
Babalawo, 𝗃𝗲𝗿𝗁 Orisha. Yeah.
And that needs to be a sacred relationship. Now, granted, there can be separations. There can be, as we know, it's happened to both of us, where there's distancing between godchildren and godparents.
Comes with the territory.
It happens, right? You can't always, there's free will. People go
Yeah.
separate ways. To a certain extent, he was said that sooner or later, every Babalawo distances himself from his padrino, from his godfather.
𝗿𝗏𝗻𝗁, yeah.
So that he can
as
learn.
nature intends. Yeah.
Exactly. That said, though, that relationship never ends.
No.
A child is always able to ask his father or his mother for the blessing.
Yes, sir.
And that parent always has to give it.
Yes, sir.
The second we start to complicate or confuse relationships, things go south.
Yep.
Right? Because you have to understand, too, is that when you're in a relationship, a romantic relationship with somebody, that dynamic is not the same.
By no means.
As padrino, and not even just as the sexual side of it or the intimate side of it.
Everything gets convoluted, yeah.
It's the same reason to a certain extent why I'm not a big proponent of men who abuelos that have brothers initiating their brothers. Now there is a sign that says that you can do it under certain situations.
Yeah.
But the respect required.
Yeah, you might not get that from your brother.
To a godfather.
Yeah.
Is not there.
You might not get that.
It's rarely there. Maybe it's possible. Maybe certain families have
1 in
that,
10
right?
cases.
Yeah. And the same thing is true. You and your significant other can argue in certain ways and can talk to each other in certain
other
ways.
people when you can't.
That is not to be allowed.
Yeah.
Between godchild and godfather or godmother, because that person, it's like sponsorship. Right?
Yeah.
And when we talk about Alcoholics Anonymous and things, that whole process of having a sponsor, that person's not your friend. The person's not your brother at that point. That person's certainly not your significant other. That person is there to correct you.
Yep.
And to set you on the right path.
And you can't really correct people when you do certain things together.
Because it's too personal.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. No, completely agree. And when we're talking about that concept, I think another thing that sometimes we're seeing now is the economic aspect of things. Mm-hmm. As far as the handling of money, how it works. I mean, what have you seen within the community as far as, God forbid, theft or anything when it comes to like funds and things like that?
Yeah. So I was told when I was initiated in Ifa that Ogbe Tua is all about, marketing things and the business aspect, and to be careful with that, right? So my career is about Babalawo, my life is about Babalawo. I've always been very, very careful, almost overcorrecting. Yeah. To the point where I've never been super comfortable talking about the money aspect. Yeah. I'd rather somebody else, if I could have a manager that could charge whatever needs to be charged for the people, and I just focus on the spiritual aspect of it and the guidance, that would be an ideal world. That's not how things work. Yeah, no. Unfortunately, a big part of this religion is money because everything costs something. Yeah, and we, not every Babalawo raises animals or grows plants or, the problem with that is, por la plata baila el mono. Yes. The monkey dances for the money, right? Yep. Money rules, cash rules everything around me. Oh, yeah, cream. Yeah, right? Definitely. And so we spoke in another conversation about 𝗿𝗏𝗍𝗍. 𝗿𝗏𝗍𝗍 says it very clearly. It says, good and evil walked hand in hand, best of friends, until money showed up. Yes. And then God said, people are going to love this more than they love me. Yeah. And look at the world today. Everything is about money. When you want to know why something's being done, follow the green. Yeah. It's not red or blue in politics. It's not black or white in colors. It's green. And that it's infiltrated the religion, because everything costs money. Now we start padding it. And then there's the ever offensive practice of holding the 𝗹𝗶𝗸𝗲's belongings
Oh no, completely taboo.
until they pay for certain other ceremonies
Completely
and this, that, or the
taboo.
other thing. Like this is abuse. This is the reason why people leave the religion,
Yeah.
or at the very least, in the best of cases, leave their godparents
Yeah.
because they're being held hostage,
Yeah.
and you cannot do that.
Completely taboo. You deserve everything you pay for from the moment you pay for it. The only reason you don't receive it at the moment of payment is because we still have to take you through the process.
Yes.
But if the first year of Ifa is ideal for the Awo to study, the first year of Orisha is ideal for the Awo to study.
Absolutely.
And the first thing you need to start studying, just like the first thing we start studying, is our book. So therefore, that has to be given immediately. Another huge taboo within Ifa, my brother, apart from the stealing of funds or withholding of items, completely taboo, is the proselytizing or advertisement of Ifa.
Yeah.
Babalawo is not allowed to knock on anybody's door and be like, hey, Orula. You know, how do you feel about the new advertisements of Ifa? You know, you see it all the time now, initiate with me, do with me. I mean, what do you feel about online?
So I feel like there's a couple of, I don't want to say that there's a contradiction from Odu to Odu, but there is a saying in Ifa that says that which is not announced is not bought.
Yeah.
That which is not advertised is not bought. So there is nothing wrong with putting ourselves out there, much in the way that we're doing now, discussing, key points of the religion.
Yeah.
Where it gets tricky is offering consecrations online.
Yeah, like
offering consecrations on, like if I were to say, call me so we can initiate you in Ifa.
Yeah, this is very passive. I mean, we might not get it.
This is education.
Completely. I mean, to be frank with you, you have your practice, I have mine. I don't think we need necessarily another reading. No new readings may come from this whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? And that's perfectly fine. But it's like you're saying when you're getting inboxed 10 times in a row, like, you need 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏. Why haven't you fed 𝘃𝗶𝗏? Why haven't you paid me to feed your 𝘃𝗶𝗏? I just did a reading for you without you even asking for me. You know, this, that, and the third. That's where you fall into the taboo of aspects. Because Orula felt it was a sin to bother.
Yes. There's even patakis that explain that Orula never went to anyone's home.
Absolutely not.
If you needed help, if you needed salvation or assistance in any way, you had to go. Even the king had to bow his head, go into Oru and go visit Orumila to seek salvation, right? And it's sad for me to say this next part, but it seems to me like those inbox messages of receive Ori, receive, Orisha ye, receive 𝘃𝗶𝗏, and you just send me this much money and I'll send it to you, comes mostly from people saying that they are 𝘃𝗍𝗍.
Yes. Yeah, due to the distance, yeah.
And I will openly say here that it's not, I don't think it is inherent of the practice.
No, God, no.
The problem is it goes back to the issue of ignorance. People know more about Lukumi than they do about 𝘃𝗍𝗍.
Yes.
And so it's easier for 𝘃𝗍𝗍 people to say, oh, no, that's fine. In our practice, that's okay.
Yeah.
In our practice, it's allowed. And it is not.
We have more of a checks and balance system over there. And then another thing about that is the youth in Nigeria, from what I understand, the young Awos and Olorisha, they've really understood, how to maneuver social media and things like that. When you look at the concept of an African religion, you have somebody of African origin and residence reaching out saying this, that, and the third. You're immediately probably going to believe them if you don't know any better, not knowing that person might have just done 𝗃𝗏𝗏 yesterday, but their grandfather's like this big time, title holder over there. Oh, this is my grandfather, but you in turn might not know much.
Right.
You could easily deceive somebody. And, again, people are getting deceived. I've heard of people getting deceived for thousands of dollars. We're not talking about $20 for a reading, et cetera.
There's even a horror story of a particular white American alleged Babalawo who has a center in the States. We will not give him any publicity. Who was not actually initiated, but actually found a young guy who sold him his deceased father's Ifa implements.
That's in the 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗏. That's crazy. That actually came to fruition.
There's a lot of things that we're seeing now where we've been, because that one's not new. We've been seeing things like that for a while now. False initiations that were never. Now we have men receiving supposedly iyami oshorongā.
Yeah, no.
Things that are just not by any stretch of the imagination.
Not really coherent. Yeah. I mean, you can't control those ladies, let alone receive them. The best thing we could do is appease.
Exactly.
I don't have an issue with people getting taken advantage of. What I'm seeing as well, though, I mean, I do have an issue with them getting taken advantage of. Not them, though, as far as blaming them. Right. But when you've been able to come to a conclusion, hey, what was done was missing certain key things that I need to be able to say I'm this. we need to mend that. What I am noticing is that some people are like, the heck with it. This is how it was done to me, and I'm just going to continue. And there's been a lot of cases recently on Facebook of things really coming out. And one thing you really want to avoid, guys, is, you know, anything that could take away prestige as a professional, you know, and that's why taboo is so important to respect.
Yes,
You know?
yes. Everything, it's a big part of this religion or of life in general is not prestige in the sense of showing off, but rather your, you know, what people think of you,
Your reputation, good Lord.
your reputation in the community. I am the first to admit, and you know more than anybody else, that I'm not always the most liked guy by some people in the community, and I accept that.
Yeah.
You know, we don't see eye to eye. But one thing that people cannot say is that I've stolen money. When people that I can't, something they can't say is that I've initiated someone who shouldn't have been, or that it wasn't done right. That reputation, everybody, even people who consider me an enemy to a certain extent, will say that, yeah, he's serious.
That's respect. Yeah.
I don't agree with him, but he's serious.
And I love that you just touch on that, because that's where I really want to bring things full circle. Because I think even though Ifa has a bunch of taboos, right? When you have a religion and you have guidelines, there's always a way to make a mistake. But I think all of them come from possibly this root right here besides money, and it's slander. The hugest taboo you can delve into as an initiated person in Ifa is to speak negatively about another initiated person in Ifa. And I tell you, I remember when I was a young man, the way the Babalawos would move or the Santeras would move, like, it was such a level of elegance. And it was still spicy. You know, as human beings, it's still a heated environment. I always tell people this is Africa. No matter how refined we want to seem as 𝗃 Orisha and Babalawo, we are African in descent. So there's always going to be that heat. But there was always such elegance. No one was ever capable of taking a weapon out and showing it to another spiritual professional, let alone a curse word, let alone raising one's voice, raising one's hands. There was never any of that. I think it was even more of respect than fear, but sure, there was probably an element of fear too, because, you know, as we go further back, the stories you hear, I mean, about people kind of, you said this about me now, it was very similar to the mob, I think, you know. How do you feel about the climate online? I mean, with TikTok and Facebook and people just literally ripping each other to shreds, what do you think this has done to us?
Yeah, I have a little bit of a persona online.
Sure.
Right. And again, it doesn't rub everybody the right way. It's not for everybody, and that's okay. I try to, when I comment on things online, I try to keep it to the practice.
Yes.
And not the person. If
Yes,
something
sir.
is wrong, it is wrong.
Yes, sir.
But you don't see me now because that guy is garbage. There's several people online that I would have to say are a huge cancer in this religion. Yeah. And I will not name them, namely because I don't want to give them any publicity.
Sure.
Right? I think everybody knows, you know,
the usual suspects.
The usual suspects, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be because they're, you know, they're known, you know, marketing, like they're known businessmen more than religious people, or whether it's just their attitude online, things like that. The other thing I've noticed in the last maybe, I don't know, 5-6 years tops, is this 𝗃𝗶𝗱𝗲, like this
a lot of frustration.
Like, my God, what place does it have for you to have the backdrop of your orishas and threatening somebody with a gun?
Yeah, no.
That you aren't any better than me in the religion, and if you want to bring it to this, we can do this too, because I'm never unarmed. I'm never not armed.
Yeah,
I'm always carrying.
Yeah,
that's unacceptable.
And what impression does that give other people about us? Because here's the thing, Ifa comes up heavy on the algorithm, like through our analytics and stuff like that. The millions and millions of views that our culture gets is really unparalleled by others, other than like the Abrahamic faiths, you know, that have followings already. So when that random person who's trying to find themselves spiritually, who's on their journey and awakening process, randomly comes across one of these videos, because, I mean, you know, they're getting a lot of views, you know, and then that's what you see, immediately any, you know, sound person is like, I don't want to be anywhere near that.
And I'm glad that you said that, any sound person. There's a concept that it's suggested in different odus, but I didn't actually learn it from Ifa originally, is that water seeks its own level.
Correct.
Right? Now, when people go looking for a house to become a member of, or for a godfather or godmother to initiate them, they ultimately are looking for the type of religious person that they want to be.
Yeah.
Now, the reason things are getting worse and worse is because there is enough people who glorify that bravado.
Yeah, no.
Glorify the talking smack, right?
Yeah,
That,
nonsense.
I'm gonna knock you out if I see you. There was one guy who said
it's like a rap documentary.
Right. There was one guy who said he was gonna spit in the mother's mouth, the other guy's mother's mouth. Like these are things that
but who talks
I don't
like
know
that?
where this came from.
Yeah,
It's
no, it's
disgusting
nonsense, man.
You know, I remember. Again, I just turned 10 in Ifa, and I'm going on 22 in 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏, because I was 11 when I was initiated, 11 in Santo when I was initiated to Ifa. And I remember way back then, when a Babalawo walked into a room, there was a respect. And again, I'm not saying this because I want that to happen for me. I don't care about any of that. But and not just Babalawo, an Orisha that had
anybody, a
you know,
brother,
had years
anybody,
of experience, and there was a respect that, oh, you know, so and so Fulano's here, and you know, everybody was on edge listening to what this person had to say so that they could learn.
I heard they used to even flip the drum. Like if somebody came in and they had like 𝘃𝗂𝗹𝗁 done for like 60 years, the tamboreros would be like, and then out of nowhere start playing the 𝘃𝗂𝗹𝗁 out of respect. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
When they showed up at the drumming, so it was that level, and then to see where we've gotten to, you know, it's just
now it's all booyahs. It's all
it's I know more than you, you know more than me, and the beautiful thing about knowledge is the person that usually says the least, especially in that context, is usually the person that knows more. You know, you don't have to. That's not a reflection of knowledge, at least not the knowledge that's going to help you progress within Ifa and Orisha. Because Orumila and all of the Orishas, I get a little frustrated because they got Orula sounding like the guy who sat in the corner with the dunce cap on. Orula was probably the most mischievous out of everybody, but he never wanted to focus on that. All of Orumila and all of the Orishas, when they exemplified that behavior, it did not end well for them. They all were humility. It's not that I'm a son of 𝘃𝗏𝗏 and I'm like this, or, you know, I'm a son of 𝗃𝗏𝗏 and I'm like this, or I'm a Babalawo and like this. Everybody has to be held to that same standard.
Yes.
You know, because that's the only way we're going to move forward. Because if we continue, and this is taboo, delving into this taboo of speaking negatively about each other, speaking a certain way in a public forum, we are never going to be recognized at the global religion that we are. You know, it's insane how we can be that high on the spiritual census and still not necessarily be recognized.
We are, as a group, we are de-evolving.
Yes.
And it needs to stop. You know, and you know, in terms of the big mouths, it's always going to be the case that ignorance is louder than wisdom.
Sure.
You know, and because of that, it gets heard more. It gets spread more. A big pet peeve of mine, it's even worse than a pet peeve, I'm not sure what you'd call it at this point, is mayores, you know, elders that go to drummings or go to ceremonies, see things done absolutely wrong and stay quiet.
Yeah.
You are just as responsible for the garbage being done.
𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏 says that the assassin and the witness have the same amount of culpability. They're both guilty if they don't do anything. And
then the funny thing is, now when you get them alone, you start talking to them, they're criticizing what was done.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything to fix it.
Yeah.
And you know, for people love to talk about the 40 years and the 50 years that they have in 𝘃𝗏𝗏.
Sure.
But you're allowing it to die. If you love this religion as much as you say you love this religion, and I believe deep down you do, why are you? I mean, we have to stop it. We have to do something
at least
about
if you're not going to say anything, don't accept the $10. You know what I'm saying? If you feel that strongly about it, you know, because that's the only other motivation I can surmise. And
I mean,
the thing is it's, you know, it's really, it has been a deterioration. And it brings us back to what I think is the central theme: to avoid 𝗿𝗏𝗏 and taboo is to follow the commandments of 𝘃𝗶𝗏𝗏.
Yes.
The 16 laws: don't lie, don't contemplate a brother or sister's partner, don't do ceremonies without knowledge. You know, all of those. Definitely take a time to look at them, guys. You know, that's anybody that wants that from us will get it immediately. Send your email, because this is entry level. Before I did Ifa to my guys, I said, look these over, try to memorize them, but have them
at least the concept.
Have the concepts and never fall into this, because the only way to get out of this is to do it all over again.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I remember years ago. I think this was even before I passed to Ifa. I remember having a conversation with, self-proclaimed. I don't know if he was actually 𝘃𝗏𝗏𝗏 or not. He was up in Connecticut. Yeah. And he was talking about, you know, negatively about how he was lifted to go work a ceremony. They wanted to feed Babalawo.
Okay,
cool. I mean, that's pretty routine for anyone who knows what they're doing, right? He gets there, and he's setting up, and he's like, okay, so where's Babalawo so we can start? And they bring a statue of San Lázaro.
Yeah.
Now, what do you do? Well, what he did was
Yeah.
complaining about the situation to us.
Yeah.
What he did was he fed the statue.
Yeah. No, man.
You just contributed to the murder
Yeah.
of a tradition.
Yeah. You stuck the knife in again.
You know, the correct thing for a responsible elder to do is educate.
It's an education process.
And if they insist, walk away.
Yeah.
I'm not participating, because ultimately, you and I both know, and people out there that are initiated, when you were initiated, you made a pact, and you made that pact. Certain entities were listening.
Yeah.
You swore.
Or he was listening.
Right. You swore to do things right.
Yeah.
And I don't want when it's my turn to leave, I don't want to have to go to the foot of God and explain why I did these things or why I allowed them done in my presence.
Yeah. I was actually speaking to a brother recently. He's in 𝘃𝗵𝗃𝗍, knowledgeable guy. He says, Joseph, when we die, we get judged by 3 juries: the plants, the animals, and the people. So, for example, that situation you mentioned where unfortunately an animal had to perish, feeding, plaster. When you get up there, that chicken's going to say, hey, you killed me and there was no Orisha there to assume my soul.
Right.
The plants are going to be like, you washed it and there was no Orisha there to assume my energy. And the person's going to be like, you never told me any better. So it's something that, you really have to search within and do your best to avoid. Be in the right circle. Surround yourself with high-value people. Even within this, there's so many different personalities. And Damian, I ask you as we kind of bring things full circle, I mean, what advice can you give to the people out there, initiated or uninitiated, how to avoid any of these behaviors that we've spoken about here that are undesirable?
I mean, first and foremost, it comes down to some, self-study, some self-analysis, right? You have to, especially in particular the people that are not yet initiated or thinking about it, but even people with years and years of initiation, because it's said that every day we initiate ourselves again.
Yeah, la reiniciación, yep.
Is you have to ask yourself, what kind of religious person do you want to be? What kind of spiritual person do you want to be? Do you want to be, why did you get into this? Why are you thinking about getting into this? My Padrino Ifa, before he initiated me, that was the question. He gave me homework. He said, I want you to write down, what is it about you that you need to change? What is it about you that's not working? Why do you need to do this? Because a man should never make Ifa or pass to Ifa because he wants to. A man should feel that he's passing to Ifa because he has to.
Yes, sir.
Because he must.
Yeah.
That's the misrepresentation or misunderstanding with people, is that they say, oh, with regards to the men and women, whether women, the Yanifa thing, and it's a long going, why are men allowed to? It's not that men are allowed to and women aren't. Yeah. It's that men must to fix themselves. It takes more to fix us.
Yes, sir.
Think about it. Humanity, society creates monsters in men.
Yes.
The only way to fix that is by initiating into Ifa. Yes. To the highest level that your Ori permits.
Yes. Right?
And so we need to. And if that's the case, if we assume that, then we must ask ourselves, why do we need to? And after that, the next question needs to be, who is this person? Is this elder the type of person, the type of religious or spiritual person I want to be? You will always see it. When you see an elder in a house that is unscrupulous, that is, spiritually dirty, you look at the house and the godchildren that stay are the same way.
Yeah, that culture is there. It's living, it's growing.
It spreads. Water seeks its own level.
Correct.
And we have to take that into consideration when we initiate. This is not, I'm sorry, but we don't initiate to have big.
We don't. I mean, this is because we're on stage. I mean, you probably walk past us and.
I put this on today because I was coming here. The only ones I wear are the ones that are tied on.
Sure.
And to a certain extent, everybody when they first get initiated wants to wear
the big one.
Be right.
After that, it gets heavy.
Exactly, but it's not. It should never be about that. What is it about you that needs to change? There's always something that needs to change. If there wasn't something that needed to change, divination would be useless.
Yeah.
Initiation would be useless.
A higher power would be useless. We'd know everything. The ego would be able to stay.
Yeah. But at last I checked, there is no perfect human being. Nope. There's always something that's not working for you. Nope. And that's what we need to focus on with this. And then ultimately you have to find the right teacher that's going to guide you through this process of improvement. We always say the biggest taboo, the biggest offering we can do is changing our mindset and then changing our behaviors.
Yes, sir.
So it's all about perspective and motivation. What's your motivation?
What a conversation, brother.
Yeah, always.
Beautiful stuff. Happy we were able to sit down and go over all these things, especially you being somebody as passionate about preserving what our elders and ancestors left for us as I do. So,
Indeed.
sincerest thanks. And I think they're going to want you back on. I believe it.
Well, it has been an honor and a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have these conversations. You know how it is when we're in ceremony. The ceremony ends at 11 and we're there till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Word. We got to get ripped out by our significant others, man. It's time to go home.
Yes.
But, you know, that's that Ifa stuff. But I love you dearly, and I appreciate
you.
Ali. Family, a couple closing and final thoughts before we go ahead and disconnect. If you like Damian's perspective and you're interested in dialoguing with him, his information will be in the description. 𝗏𝗏𝗏candlesandmore.com is up and running for services and products. Catch the podcast on YouTube or on all major platforms where it's gone over 12,000 downloads. Pretty epic stuff there. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Big thank you from Our Roots Podcast. And until next time, see the light.